This is a good place to call home, and it is good to see so many good friends here. We braved the rain. You braved the rain to come out because this is a really important day in all of our futures. I want to thank Deb Coltsey for running for the assembly here. We need to take that seat back. This is Janesville's seat, and it should be in the Democratic column. And she's going to make it. And, you know, Rob Zurbine, I like to say whenever I appear with him, and I have frequently, he's a guy that helped me many times in Kenosha when I was running for office, and was a good friend, an effective businessman. But the thing I like about him is he's going to cause Paul Ryan to lose a doubleheader. So you can go out right now and vote for Barack Obama, for Joe Biden, for a new senator who's going to do a great job, Tammy Baldwin. Please help get the word out about how easy the voting is. You can go to your local clerk's office on your own time. You can even register and vote at the same time. Visit www.ownyourvoicewi.com for the information you need to cast your ballot here in Wisconsin. So we help people know the basics of that. Rob already laid out the fact that it's a shorter period than we had before. The Republicans don't like this early voting. When I was brought up in this town, I was taught that voting is good, and that the more people that vote, that's better for democracy. That's what I still believe. But the Republicans in this state said, well, we better shorten up that early voting time. So they've shortened it up, but we still have a decent period of time between now and the election to get that done. You might ask, why is it so important? Well, let's go back to January 20th, 2009. You remember what happened that day? It was a wonderful day. We saw Barack Obama sworn in as President of the United States. I had a good seat in those days. I was looking down the mall, 1 million people, the largest crowd in American history. And the whole country seemed calm and quiet and proud that this moment was occurring. I like to kid around. It seemed like nobody was even arrested that day. I'm sure somebody was. But it was a great day in American history. But, something else happened in Washington that night that I hope you're aware of. You may not be. Their book's been written about already. And that is, the deal is that when your party loses the presidential election, you don't get to go to the inaugural balls and all the parties and everything. You go to the inauguration, but you just got to find a dinner reservation somewhere and eat because, you're not invited. Well, a group of our Republican buddies decided to go have dinner at a place called the Palm Restaurant in Washington that night. And the Palm is a steak place created by the two leading lobbyists in Washington. They thought that would be cute. So that was the place chosen by Newt Gingrich and Eric Cantor and Paul Ryan. And I don't know what they ate or what they drank, but by the end of the evening, they had made a blood oath to make sure that Barack Obama didn't get anywhere. They pledged to make sure that they would frustrate this man who had been elected overwhelmingly by the people of the United States of America. That was their goal. That's what they thought was appropriate. Those of us that got gray hair remember there was a cartoonist for the Washington Post named Herblock. Remember him? Yeah. He's the guy that sort of came up with the Nixon 5 o'clock shadow cartoons. But on the day that Richard Nixon was sworn in as President of the United States, January 20th, 1969, he just ran a simple cartoon on the front page that showed an empty barber's chair and the lather and the blade, and it just said, every president gets a clean shave. Well, the Republicans didn't allow Barack Obama that honeymoon. We didn't even do that to George Bush when he didn't really win the election. Yeah. And yet, this is what they thought was the appropriate thing to do. But you know what? The president forged ahead anyway. Against all odds, he became the first president to pass health care reform in this country in 70 years. He reformed the entire student loan system. So that instead of wasting money on the middleman, he made sure the students could get loans more easily and less expensively. And yes, something I cared about a lot, because I sure worked on this, he got us out of Iraq, where we shouldn't have gone in the first place. Republicans like to claim claim that the president hasn't done anything in the economy, but, I kind of like the fact that we've had 31 consecutive months of positive job growth. Can you imagine what they'd be saying if that hadn't happened? That's incredibly impressive. Obviously, there's more that has to be done, but it doesn't help when people like my successor, Mr. Ron Johnson, said last week, actually, the economy wasn't in free fall in January 2009. It wasn't. Losing 700,000 jobs a month. We passed a stimulus bill, which actually did a fair amount of good. All they did was badmouth. It's hard for the economy to recover when the Republican goal is to make sure it doesn't, for election purposes, to make sure that this president doesn't get reelected. But he's fought on anyway. Same thing goes for dealing with this debt problem that I know the president cares deeply about. He has had specific proposals to deal with it, and he's been willing to give those specifics that the Republicans won't give. You've heard Romney. He's going to give a $5 trillion tax cut to the wealthy, but it's not going to cost a dime, right? Because he's going to identify all these tax breaks that he's going to close up. Well, he's never going to do that. He's going to make sure the $5 trillion cut comes in. You got to go back to Ryan before he was a vice presidential candidate to actually get at the specifics, because Paul says that he doesn't have the time on TV to explain all this to the rest of us. But here's the thing. The Ryan plan that he actually put forth did involve $1 trillion in spending cuts, including things like food stamps, Pell Grants, a lot of things that really cut to the bone. But what he doesn't like to mention is that in the first 10 years of that $1 trillion in cuts, there's $4 trillion in tax cuts. Okay, now, we both went to the same high school. But we must have had different math teachers. Because as harsh as his cuts are, it's a $3 trillion hole in the budget that this guy is proposing. That's not the person you want to trust with solving our country's problems. And tonight you're going to hear about the international issues. Notice something about the international issues? These guys have shown no interest in the concerns we have around the world throughout their career. They never have. They've just gotten up and said, we've got to deal with the domestic issue, blame Obama for the economy. All of a sudden they get interested only when a tragedy occurs in Benghazi. We checked on the Republican debates of the primary. They never mentioned Libya. They never mentioned Somalia. They only mentioned Yemen once, but now when there's an opportunity to get political points, this is when they show an interest in this deal. So this is what we're up against. And I think you have to realize that probably the most important thing, that you probably would agree with me on, is that we got a little problem with money and politics in this country. I know you're surprised to hear me say that. But having worked on this issue for so long, the Citizens United decision is one of the worst decisions in the history of our country. Absolutely. There's only a few cases that people actually know. Dred Scott, Brown versus Board. People don't walk around saying, hey, did you hear about the latest Supreme Court case? That's not normal behavior. Roe v. Wade. Bush v. Gore. Citizens United giving corporations unlimited ability to do this is one of the worst decisions in the history of our country. And I'm proud of President Obama. He had that Supreme Court in front of him a couple years ago right after that decision, and he called them out.
Yes, he did.
Which is, a little bit on the edge there, but he called them out and said, what were you thinking? Now, the only way that we're going to deal with the Citizens United decision is to have it overturned. And that means new justices. And the question for you as you vote is, who gets to pick those justices? You've seen the justices that Barack Obama's already appointed. They're great. We need more like that so we can get our democracy back. But for all these races, Wisconsin is the key. People might say, you always say that. Wisconsin's the key. It's still very important. It's very important. One of the commentators today that talks about this every day says the whole thing is going to come down to Ohio and Wisconsin. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it could. And if that's true, it could come down to Janesville, where I think somebody's expecting to get a really good vote. But I want you to send them a different message.
Yes.
So get out there and start voting today. Good to see you.